20 years. That's how long it took for karma to deliver the perfect revenge. When Sarah Mitchell walked into that courtroom, she had no idea her son would be sitting across from the man who destroyed their family. The man who left her pregnant and broke. The man who never paid a single dollar in child support. But here's the twist. Her son wasn't there as a victim. He was there as the prosecutor. And his father? Well, his father was about to learn that some debts can never be forgiven. The rain hammered against the hospital windows as Sarah clutched her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, alone, the divorce papers still warm in her trembling hands. Michael had left her for his secretary, a woman barely older than his college-age daughter from his first marriage. Classic story, right? But this wasn't just any abandonment. This was calculated cruelty. Sarah had given Michael everything. She'd put him through law school, working double shifts as a nurse while he studied. She'd supported his dreams, his ambitions, his climb up the corporate ladder. When he finally made partner at the prestigious law firm downtown, she thought they'd made it. Finally, their sacrifices would pay off. That's when he served her the papers. "I need someone who understands my lifestyle now," he'd said, not even looking at her. "Someone who fits." The secretary was 25, blonde, and had never worked a day shift in a hospital corridor. She fit perfectly into his new world of country club dinners and charity galas. But leaving wasn't enough for Michael. He wanted to erase Sarah completely. He froze their joint accounts, changed the locks on their house, the house she'd helped pay for. Had his lawyers tie up the divorce proceedings for months, bleeding her dry with legal fees she couldn't afford. Every motion, every delay, every court date was designed to break her spirit. And when little James was born, Michael refused to sign the birth certificate. "Prove it's mine," he'd said through his attorney. The DNA test came back 99.7% positive, but by then Michael had vanished. New city, new life, new wife. He left behind nothing but a forwarding address that led to a P.O. box, and a son who would grow up wondering why his father had chosen not to love him. Sarah worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat: day shifts at the hospital, evening shifts at a clinic, weekend shifts wherever she could find them. Little James learned to do homework at hospital break rooms and fell asleep to the sound of his mother's exhausted breathing. But here's what Michael didn't know about Sarah. She was documenting everything: every missed payment, every ignored court order, every birthday card that went unacknowledged. Every Christmas morning when James asked why Daddy didn't come. She kept it all, a mother's methodical record of abandonment. Years passed like pages in a book nobody wanted to read. James grew up brilliant, driven, and haunted by questions his mother couldn't answer without breaking his heart. Why didn't Dad want us? What did we do wrong? Are we not good enough? Sarah would hold him close and whisper, "Someday, baby. Someday he'll understand what he lost." James channeled his pain into purpose. Valedictorian in high school, full scholarship to law school, the same law school his father had attended. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah, but she kept quiet. James had chosen his path, and she wouldn't taint it with her bitterness. What she didn't know was that James had chosen law for one reason: to understand the system that had failed them. To learn the language of justice his father spoke so fluently when he destroyed their lives. 20 years after that rainy hospital night, Sarah sat in the gallery of courtroom 12. She'd received a call from James the night before. "Mom, I need you to come to court tomorrow. Trust me, okay? Just be there." She watched her son, now District Attorney James Mitchell, having kept her maiden name, adjust his tie and organize his papers. Across the courtroom, the defense table remained empty. She checked her watch. 9:58 a.m. That's when the doors opened. Michael Harrison walked in, flanked by his own attorneys. 20 years older, 20 pounds heavier, but unmistakably the man who had walked out of her life. He'd been indicted for tax evasion, embezzlement, and fraud. Millions of dollars, decades of crimes finally catching up. But Sarah's breath caught when she realized something else. Michael hadn't recognized his son. James stood up slowly, his voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. Your Honor, the people versus Michael Harrison. I'm District Attorney James Mitchell prosecuting this case. Michael's face went white. The name, the resemblance, the impossible mathematics of time and karma aligning perfectly. Do you know the defendant personally, counselor? The judge asked. James looked directly at his father for the first time in 20 years. Yes, Your Honor. The defendant is my biological father. The courtroom erupted. Michael's attorneys immediately called for a mistrial, claiming conflict of interest. But James was ready. Your Honor, I've recused myself from all personal involvement. However, I've also done something else. He opened a thick folder. I've compiled 20 years of evidence showing the defendant's pattern of financial irresponsibility and fraudulent behavior, beginning with his refusal to pay court-ordered child support totaling $847,000 in today's dollars. Every missed payment, every ignored court order, every legal maneuver Michael had used to avoid responsibility. Sarah's meticulous records, now legal evidence in a federal fraud case. The defendant's history of evading financial obligations directly supports the people's case that his current crimes follow a decades-long pattern of financial deception. Michael sat frozen as his son, the child he'd abandoned, denied, and forgotten, methodically destroyed him with the very law he'd once used as a weapon. But James wasn't done. Furthermore, the defendant's unpaid child support will be immediately garnished from any assets recovered in this case. Every stolen dollar will first go to paying the debt he owes to the family he abandoned. Sarah watched 20 years of pain transform into something else, not just justice, poetry. The boy who used to ask why Daddy didn't love him was now the man ensuring Daddy finally paid for that choice. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Michael was convicted on all counts, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His assets liquidated to pay restitution, first to the government, then to Sarah and James. After the verdict, Michael approached James in the hallway. Son, don't. James's voice was steady, calm. You gave up the right to call me that 20 years ago, but thank you for teaching me something valuable. What's that? That some men are exactly who they appear to be, and that karma doesn't rush, but it never forgets. Sarah watched her son walk away from his father for the second time in his life. But this time, James was the one in control. As they left the courthouse together, Sarah finally understood what she'd been teaching James all those years. Not that justice was guaranteed, but that sometimes if you're patient enough, if you're strong enough, if you refuse to give up, the universe finds a way to balance the scales. Michael lost everything. His freedom, his fortune, his reputation. But Sarah and James? They'd already won the only thing that mattered. They'd survived. They'd thrived. And they'd done it together. 20 years later, karma had finally come to collect, and it brought interest. If you believe in karma too, subscribe and we'll see you in the next story.